Okay, we'll resume the Yoga Sutra talks. So, till now we've done 7 verses, yes? We've done up to chapter 1, 6 actually. We'll do the 7th today. So, the last one was Pramana Viparaya Vikalpa Nidra Smartaya. These are the 5 fluctuations or modifications of mind. So, today we'll deal only with the Pramana. What is the Pramana fluctuation or what is the Pramana modification of the mind? So, this is Yoga Sutra chapter 1 verse 7. Pratyaksha Anumana Agama Pramanani. What is Pramana or what is proof? What is considered as the modification of the mind that is considered as the proof? What are they? So, these are the 3 that are considered in classical yoga. Later on in the Vedantic they go on up to 6, but these 3 are understood. What is authority? Even more than proof. When we say praman, it means it has been proved, it has been demonstrated. Quaderat demonstrandum, that is a pramana, QED. So, it doesn't mean quite easily done, yeah. So these 3 classical ones in yoga are very interesting in terms of, first of all, he is saying it is still a chitta vritti, it is still a modification. Nevertheless, it is important and it is valuable. So इसमें देखने का है. So the first one is pratyaksha, the next one is anumana, the third one is agama, and these are the 3. So pratyaksha means that which is visible, that which is tangible, that which you can touch, that which you can see, that which you can experience. Pratyaksha. Now, this is where the genius of Patanjali comes in. I always say this, because today we are in a state of scientific knowledge where we understand that which we perceive is usually wrong. Because our perception tells us that we are on a still planet, a flat planet, and that the sun rises and sets, whereas we know, our conceptual knowledge tells us the planet is not still, it is moving very, very fast. It is moving very fast through space and it is revolving also. It is not flat, it is round. And while the sun does move, it is we who are moving around the sun, not the sun who is moving around us. So in that sense, intuitively, not that he gave any proof for it, but intuitively he understood that what is perceived is also an aspect of chitta vritti. It is also a fluctuation of the mind. That which is perceived is also, because this is a subset. What is the main set? The main set is pramana, which last time I did the talk, we already understood that also is not a concrete, it's a fluctuation of the mind. Yes, it's a useful working hypothesis. You can do many useful things by taking some things for granted. So you take certain things for granted and you can work with it. But I always find this thing of the pratyaksha was put, that which is manifest, that which is obvious, that which is evident, was put into a fluctuation of mind. How did he know? How did he figure out? But that is the whole point of that deeper level of buddhi, and then buddhi goes then even deeper into viveka. See, because buddhi is not something that is of the mind. The mind in yoga is regarded as something quite stupid. Because we know, at least those who are in the integral yoga should know that the mind is composed of thoughts. When thoughts accumulate, mind is created, and thoughts always come from outside. thoughts are hardly ever our own. So, obviously the mind is not something very intelligent because it is an external creation. Many yogis say you think you have a mind and it is valuable and you give it so much of uh, importance, and it's usually a rubbish bin of other people's thoughts, other people's concepts, outdated issues. So pratyaksha, and that is why you cannot go into the Yoga Sutra for fun. You cannot read it for fun, because this book is only in a sense that whatever it is that you are seeing, you are forced to engage with it. Whatever it is that you are reading, you are forced to think about it. How can what is manifest be part of the fluctuation of mind? How can proof indeed be part of the fluctuation of mind? But that is the depth of Patanjali. So somebody was recently asking me that, is this person a bigger yogi than Patanjali? Is that person a bigger? I'm like, first Patanjali, then others. Let's don't don't get into these. So there is a, at a time when our culture was not so intellectually vibrant, when buddhi, like, let me finish the point about buddhi, because buddhi is not just about the mind. Buddhi is awakening the wisdom of the entire mind, body, emotion, organism. So whether you are doing asana, whether you are doing pranayama, at the deepest level you are awakening buddhi. And unless the buddhi of the body is also awakened, you are not really intelligent. Otherwise, it's still functioning from the mind, and the mind is quite stupid, and the mind is very habit driven, the mind is very susceptible to external influence. But the buddhi comes. So once the buddhi comes, then you can develop that, and then it becomes viveka, which is discrimination between true and false. So at the moment he is not dealing with even buddhi level, he is just telling you this is how you get into tangles. This is how you get into tangles. So viveka is the, in a sense, not the highest potential, but one of the very important, because you really can't get anywhere spiritually until you can distinguish between nonsense and genuine. Nonsense and genuine. It is one of the big problems I face, because people keep writing to me about their experiences and they say we have these experiences. I say fine, that's understandable, it's normal, it happens. Then they have some experience that they are imagining. And they write that, and I say, no, that's your imagination. Oh God, so much depression starts up. They get offended, they get angry, they become abusive, because they have no viveka. They have no training, they have no internal awakening or wisdom to distinguish between a true experience and a false experience or a deluded experience. Because forget viveka, buddhi is also not there. The cellular level intelligence has to be activated. Now if you realize in our 8 spiritual breaths, what is the name of the first breath? Memory development breath. What is the deepest layer of fluctuation? Chittavritti, he has smritaya, memory is the deepest, even below nidra. सब भूल जाते हैं. वैसे भी तो सीफू के वीडियोस देखने की क्या जरूरत है, सीफू तो है ना. We understand that memory is a deeper level of unconsciousness than even sleep. So that is why the 8 spiritual breath starts. It's not like they had traditional names. Those are names given by John Dingle, because he realized that each breath is impacting a certain aspect of your mind body organism, mind body emotion, pranamaya kosha. It is impacting a certain. So the foundational breath, the fundamental breath that starts, because even our vasana samaskara are basically memory. It is your karmic memory. Your vasana and your samaskara is your karmic memory. Because the vasana samaskaras end up creating your personality, we can very truthfully say that it's your memory that creates your personality. So if you want to transform your personality, you have to start shifting your memory. You have to start shaking up that foundational layer. Addiction and bad habits are memories which have become too powerful now. The memory of the pleasure it gives you or the habit has become too powerful. So that is why the 8 spiritual breath starts with the memory. It's very unique breath, because all the other breaths we are standing up and we are working with the full body. Over here we are working only from the top of the head to here, because we keep our memory of course everywhere, but fundamentally in the head. And this is where we need to release it from. This is where Shiva collects all the nonsense, no? The throat, the Vishuddhi chakra. So, since it is very clear in yoga that the foundation of the personality, the deepest, most unconscious, even deeper than sleep, what is therapy? All of therapy, you lie down and the person asks questions, or they play music, or they hypnotize you, and then what do you access? You access a memory. And then you decide how that memory impacted you. That is the reason for the trauma, that is the reason for the block. So the understanding is there always. Wherever people are slightly intelligent, they understand that the memory is the problem. And I don't mean like Memento or Gajni, where you have only 15 minutes. See, this is something that most people don't understand about karma, because it's a tragedy that in India people don't know what karma is, and people don't understand that karma is the way it plays out in Vasana Samskara, which is how karma manifests in our life. It's just a memory. So if you are at that level of intensity, you can drop it all in 1 minute if you really want. In one instant you can drop that whole load. That is not me, that is just a memory. But most people are simply not able to. So we have to coax them slowly to raise the vibration. Come up, raise the vibration. But that all asana, all pranayama is to create this first buddhi, then viveka. So until you get the buddhi and viveka, you won't even understand that pratyaksha, which later on, like I said, because our intellect and our wisdom capability shrank, one very odd kind of saying came up: pratyaksham kim pramanam. That which is manifest, why does it need to be proved? Yeah, very obviously they did not read Patanjali Yoga Sutras, or they failed when they tried when the teacher questioned them. So they came up with pratyaksh ka praman kya hai? Kim means what? So pratyaksham kim pramanam. That which is manifest, why does it need to be proved? This is the reason why it needs to be proved, because even your proof may be just a memory that you have, a delusion that you have. Now we are getting into deep quicksand. Yes.
By the time you actually get to understand it again, it's like...
Yeah, that's exactly what he's saying, the nature of the mind. That is why it is a fluctuation, it is a vritti. Vrittaya, that is why he says. And you see, it's perfectly possible for entire societies and civilizations to live in error. You take up an idea, and for 2000 years in the Western world they thought that Aristotle was the last word on all scientific matters. He actually wrote in one of his books that men and women have different numbers of teeth. And nobody ever thought of just telling their wife, okay, open your mouth, let me count. Because that is because of one of the other things that come from, the third one, agama, the tradition, the traditional authority. He had become such an agama that nobody dared to question. Nobody dared to question कि ये सही है कि गलत है, is this guy actually... But you can be in error. Your society can function perfectly, and your entire operating principles can be erroneous. So I keep saying that, yeah, it's all very well, Bhagavad Gita, this, that and the other, but to teach people to think, we should all put them into Yoga Sutras early on, to teach people how to just get focused on, that get the buddhi, get the viveka, then only things can function, because otherwise catastrophe happens. And it's not surprising that the Yoga Sutras is never a popular book, because the act of engaging with the Yoga Sutras means change will happen in your life, and that people don't like. People become very, very uncomfortable. They don't like, they, that again is well understood, where ignorance is bliss, is folly to be wise. Yes. बेवकूफ़ी में खुश है तो फिर ज्ञान प्राप्त करके क्या हाल. Even in the Matrix, no, that fellow is complaining that he's been pulled out of the Matrix. He wants to be plugged back in. So yeah, so pratyaksham, direct perception or direct experience, while of course valuable. Patanjali is not saying that they are not valuable. Do not make the mistake of saying that Patanjali says what is pratyaksha is not important. No, that's not what he's saying. What he's saying is that pratyaksha is also part of the vritti that we call pramana. It may or may not be the final truth. It may be a working truth. It may be a good hypothesis. But it may or may not be the final truth. So, so then we have anumana, which is inference. Inference is, pratyaksha also, even in terms of how these words come up. You see, Sanskrit is the most scientific language in the world. Pratyaksha means that which we see, because the aksha is the aksa. Pratyaksha. Actually, that is how the aksa would be the eye. So, pratyaksha, pratyaksha, what we see, yeah, what we see or what we perceive. Anumana comes from ma, is to measure. So the anumana is the measurement, is the inference. You make by looking at the data given to you, by measuring the data given to you, you make an inference. You deduce something from that. You look at it. People, anumana becomes a very vital part, especially if you're living in a rural society or something, where the anumana of the weather becomes very important. Yeah, all of Sherlock is basically inference. If you look at Sherlock, his entire power, his entire skill is basically inference. He just knows how to look at, measure the data, and of course pratyaksh, what is obvious, he doesn't need to, because he makes one very great pratyaksha statement that if you eliminate the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, is the truth. Yeah. Just eliminate what is impossible, and then whatever remains, no matter how weird it looks, is nevertheless pramana. So you wouldn't think that Sherlock would come into the Yoga Sutras, but he will. He is actually quite a yogi. His whole approach is very much like a yogi, down to the drug use. Yeah. Now, agama, gam, the word gam is actually a movement word, to go. That which has come down, that which has gone from the past to the present is agama. So the word agama becomes usually a synonym for tradition, traditional authority, scripture, text, which is why most of these things, how to build the temples, how to build the murtis, how to do the pujas, they are known as agama shastra. The shastra that is traditional, the shastra which has come down from the past to the present. So a lot of proof is based on tradition, but I just gave that example of Aristotle and the mess, and they created one theory which was so captivating because it sounded so correct. They created a theory of perfect spheres, that the planets move in perfect spheres, which is not true. The orbit is never a perfect circle. It's usually elliptical. But because of that perfect sphere business, all the mathematicians, all the astronomers were constantly rejigging things because they couldn't account for the exact movements. An orbit in a perfect sphere would not behave the way that they are observing, and even the earth, so it was a problem with giving too much credence, problem with giving too much authority to agama. It is still a problem in our country today. In most places the agama becomes a problem. In the beginning it is, there are two problems here. First of all, we don't really know what is our tradition. Most of what is going on is just folk wisdom that is passed on. As Swami Vivekananda used to say when he was a parivrajaka, he used to wander around, that every village superstition they would also earnestly assure me it is in the Vedas. So, agama can be a person also. Agama can also be a person who has the knowledge, the reputation, he is an authority, or he is supposed to be an authority. We use one word very wrongly in India, in Indian English, reputed. Reputed means supposed to be. What we mean is reputable, having the reputation of. A person who has a reputation because he has accomplishment, he has track record, usko, that is reputable, not reputed. Yeah, reputed actually means supposed to be. It is supposed to be, so we don't know. That person is reputed to speak many languages, meaning I don't know. No pratyaksha there, no anumana there, yeah, no agama there. It is a supposed to be thing, reputed. But you see everywhere, it is a reputed institution. I am like, how is an institution? And the other thing, raised up and lowered down. I'm like, raise means lower means raised up and return back. The other thing, reply back. Reply means to to answer. Return means to no pratyaksha. No anumana also. No inference. Yeah, because our rhythms are not English language rhythms. No, we directly translate. वापस आ गया, रिटर्न बैक. नो, वापस जवाब दे रहे हो, यू आर आंसरिंग मी बैक. पेरेंट्स तो बोलते हैं ना. No, so it's just an interesting. So agama also has a deeper yogic meaning. It means what comes up. What comes up from the cells. What comes up from your viveka. What comes up from your buddhi. Now, again, why has he put it into a fluctuation? Why has he put it into a vritta and not into something more that is great? Because you might not be right. It just might be something wild that you've thought of. It has surfaced in your consciousness. Because it is your consciousness, does it become the truth? And half the new age people are like that only. Because I experience it, therefore it must be valid. Not necessarily. But it's an interesting psychological truth, because very often mathematicians and many people know that. They know that something is true before they can work out the proof for it. They just feel it very deeply. The sense, the intuition is so great, and that is the agama in the sense of coming up. That is the agama in the sense of it rising. So what Patanjali is asking over here is not about this is a fluctuation of mind, these are the nature of proof. If there is a proof, it must be pratyaksha, it must be anumana, it must be agama. No. What he is asking is much deeper. He is asking very frightening fundamental level question. How do we know? How do we know that we know something? Then we have to think, because he is asking what is the nature of thought, what is the nature of knowledge, what is the nature of knowing.
Something inside you.
Multiple ways, because most people never ask that. How do you know that? Normally what we say is what is the proof, but even proof, as we have seen, is just a vritti, it's just a fluctuation. What he is asking is much deeper. How do you know? I used to confuse these kids. I would be doing these programs and I would ask them, do you think or do you think you think? Also, what he is saying is, very often when we say I know, what we mean is I think. It is an anumana on my part, or it is an agama. I am quoting some authority, or I am quoting some text, or I am quoting some, or it seems to be some kind of intuition bubbling up from me. If you are a person who is generally truthful and credible, okay, there is some purchase to that. If not, why should we listen to you? So this question of how do we know, when we ask that, it becomes even deeper than that, because it keeps going back to memory. You see, in the end it always goes back to the deepest level of smarana. How do we know the things we know? We are told by our parents, this is good, this is bad. How do they know? Now, again we have come to a state in India where these questions could be asked, because even 50 years back or even 30 years back, you would have got one tight slap. Yeah. It creates tremendous anxiety in people if you ask them, what is the source of your certainty? Why are you so sure that this is right? Can you prove it? Or is it only in a certain cultural context? Or is it only in a certain... And most people don't understand that their certainties are very, very limited, and their certainties are just a function of vasana samskara, which comes from the smarana, or the smriti, the memory. It's just a cultural memory that you are propagating from one to the other. Do you really know it? When you say pramana, it is proof, because pramana, of course, is a much more than proof. Pramana is a word that means valid knowledge. It is accurate knowledge. And Patanjali is the kind of tough guy who says that your valid and accurate knowledge may also just be a chitta vritti. It may just be vrittaya. Which again is being proved true, because when Newtonian physics was a pretty good explanation for the world until Einstein came along, and now the language that the physicists are using are becoming more and more mystical, because they don't have any other way to explain what they are observing. They don't have any other way to make sense of their data. So I find that this man was 5,000, 6,000 years back, he was so ahead of the curve. He was so deeply sensible, because anybody else would have been quite happy with understanding how people come to knowledge. Alright, pratyaksha we have anumana. What is manifest is reasonable approximation. What is inferred is a reasonable approximation. We can deduce, we can find out. Authority is a reasonable thing. What more do we want? And he's like, it may all be wrong. It may all be. It's which is why these, it was never taught in isolation. I'm not saying that if you pick up the Yoga Sutra and you dedicate yourself to it for 10-12 years, it will not bring you to liberation. But it was always taught along with the pranayama, along with the meditation, along with the, because you needed all that. You needed all that to make sense of what is going on. Because I can tell you, this whole thing of buddhi being a cellular thing, it took me a long time to understand. Because the way the word buddhi is translated as if it is some kind of intellectual thing, and it's not. Buddhi is much more vibrant than intellect. And it comes from the body, it comes from within the tissues of the body. The whole body goes into a different zone of how you process these things, how you perceive things, how you infer things, what you take as authority, all that shifts when the buddhi shifts, and then you can hopefully one day come to viveka and then go further. But like I was explaining, it's so difficult for people to do. It's so difficult for people to do. And it's amazing because of the fluctuations of mind, we can understand viparaya is misconception, vikalpa is the conceptualization we get from here, nidra we can understand, we are asleep, so we really don't have any control over that. But he is putting pramana and memory, smarana, smriti, as one of the fluctuations. Yes. This kind of courage is very rare. This kind of just take somebody who will just look unflinchingly, very unflinchingly into the nature of the mind, and how many pitfalls the mind can create for itself, and how many delusions the mind can create for itself, and he just looks at it. But to me, always the most interesting thing was this, that he puts proof as the first. Valid knowledge itself can valid knowledge itself can be just a fluctuation, because in spacing it within the 5 fluctuations of mind, he is leaving the door open that what you consider valid knowledge today may shift tomorrow. There might be a new discovery, there might be a new whatever, so what you consider valid knowledge today may quite possibly shift tomorrow. That also people don't get. That it is so open-ended. He is not saying this is the last word on the subject. If even pramana is a fluctuation of the mind, therefore it means that what you consider today to be the rock hard certainty can tomorrow become fluid. Which is a fantastic thing for anybody to say, but for a spiritual person to say, because their first thing is don't ask questions, trust. That's not a yogic approach. Sometimes people ask questions because they are not interested in learning, they are only interested in asking the questions. For those people, maybe it is a good thing. But for me, especially for all of us, since we are doing the 8 spiritual breaths and it's an integral yoga, the fact that the deepest layer of mind fluctuation, the deepest layer of the being fluctuation, the vritti, the vrittaya, the deepest layer, we take that first of all. First breath, we go straight to memory. Which also means that if a person is on the right track spiritually in the interior journey in a yogic sense, he will come to the same conclusions. I am reasonably sure John Dingle never read Yoga Sutra. But because of his attainment, because of his vibrational Shakti, and every word is so charged, he just came right to it. We have to begin with memory. It's very odd. There are other breaths, physical perfection, rejuvenation, revitalization, my own spiritual breath. But we begin with something very strange. It wouldn't even occur to, and I'm like, why? Why did he start with that? Why did he start? First breath, why not with the body? Because the body is after all the could have started with the revitalization or the rejuvenation. So even the way the breaths are structured, I'll talk on that some other time. The way the breaths are structured are also fantastic. There is the reason why they are in the sequence they are in the sequence. But till I started learning Patanjali very seriously, I never understood that John Dingle, that was masterpiece. It was such a stroke of genius that the foundational breath has to deal with the basic human problem, which is memory. There is also another reason, because it's not called the memory breath, it is called the memory development. Because there is a deeper thing. I was talking about buddhi and viveka. It's a very funny thing that as your intuitional powers grow, as your insight powers grow, your memory also grows. So if you develop your memory, that will also develop. Your intuition, your wisdom also develops. It's not the same as having photographic memory. You see, that is a different thing altogether. Or what is called an eidetic memory, where everything that happens to you is recorded. What happens in the yogic processes is, if you want to recall something that happened, you can put your attention on that, and then everything that happened in that interaction or that episode or that incident, it agama, it comes up. So it's the yogic memory is not the same as photographic memory or eidetic memory, because the yogi realizes if you carry that much clutter, you will go nuts. If you never forget anything, there are people with eidetic memory, but they have a problem. If they have to recall, they can recall only in the same time frame as the events that occurred. So if you're asking them about something, they have to play out that event in the actual time. So if they have to report a 1 hour conversation, they have to play it out over 1 hour. They cannot just go to the core of it and pull it out. So the what happens when we do yoga is quite different. What happens when we do yoga is quite different. It's a different kind of, that is that whole samyama thing, where you just put your attention onto the thing that you want to know, and the knowledge of it is revealed, or sometimes the memory of it is revealed. It's quite a different sort of approach. But this fundamental thing, that the deepest layer of consciousness, the deepest, most difficult to access, or the layer of consciousness, that is where all the human turmoil begins, is the memory, is quite an extraordinary insight. And then he is dealing with that. We'll come to the memory later. There are still 4 more verses in between. He was getting the proof out of the way, because people think, oh, I have proved it, therefore no more problem. And he was showing you that your proof is so contextual. Your pratyaksha, your perceptual understanding can be so contextual. Your anumana, your inference can be so contextual. And about agama and the trouble it causes, we don't we don't really there's nobody like this man. He is just the greatest thinker of the human state that anybody has ever come to. There's just nobody. Somebody like Carl Gustav Jung may have come to that same level at the end. In the end, or somebody like Aurobindo, but nobody can go in terms of understanding how the human being is and how these things play out. Patanjali is unsurpassed. There is simply nobody that comes remotely close to him. And we are just lucky that because of his Viveka, John Dingle created a system where we catch it the right end of the stick. We begin with the memory. The 8 spiritual breaths begins with the memory. The right end of the stick he caught. So we're just very phenomenally lucky. Yeah, आज के लिए इतना काफी, I think. How much more am I supposed to say? Sarvam Shama.